Congratulations, students, for being part of the National We the People Finals. It's really an honor, to be here, and we're proud that you're part of this competition, especially because of the technological challenges, and we can see that you're not letting that hold you back, that you'll be participating nonetheless. So I'm Donald Rogers. I teach history at Central Connecticut State University. I've been with the We the People program for many years. I know it's a top-notch program, and it's a real privilege for you to be part of it. I congratulate you on that.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Todman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado. I also have worked with the We the People program for a long time, and I congratulate you all on getting to participate today in the We the People National Challenge, and I know we all look forward to hearing your presentation.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dave Adler. I'm president of the Alturas Institute and adjunct faculty member at the law school at University of Idaho. Let me say greetings to my neighbors in Montana. It's a pleasure to be here today. I always enjoy participating in the national finals competition, and want to offer my congratulations to you. You've overcome a lot of difficult circumstances to be here, so you should be very proud of yourselves. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
So please introduce each of yourselves one at a time, and tell us something that you were doing before the COVID-ID crisis intervened and disrupted our lives, and then finally introduce your teacher.
All right, so my name is Ava McKeever. Something that I was doing before COVID hit, I think, was going to school, and I'm not going to say that I miss it, but I definitely miss it a little bit. So it's kind of a bummer that it's our senior year and it happened, but it's how it is, so yeah.
My name is Donald Malar, and one of the things I was doing before COVID was going to the gym, but unfortunately that's shut down now.
Okay, well, I'm Tenley Miller, and one of the things I was doing before the shutdown was cheering on our high school basketball team at the state basketball tournament. And our instructor is Mr. Lee Deming.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your introductions, and I'll read the question for you now. And then we'll look forward to your comments about it in a few minutes. Question is, Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution provides that state legislatures can determine the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives, yet gives Congress the power to make or alter such regulations. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a uniform election process? And what responsibility do state legislatures, state election officials, and citizens have in maintaining free and fair elections? And finally, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the trustee and delegate theories of representation as they apply to congressional districts? You may proceed.
A uniform election process has several advantages. Uniformity allows for elections to be free, fair, and fast. Were it implemented correctly, it could even hamper attempts at voter fraud. Perhaps the greatest disadvantage a uniform election process creates is its restrictions on states to act as laboratories of democracy. Were the election process completely uniform at the time of the women's suffrage movement, it's doubtful it could have gained traction. While this shortcoming has the potential to be remedied, the problems inherent in a disunified election process, such as fraud, lack of representation, and the uncertain status of voter rights, are insurmountable. Take a precursory glance at our nation's history. As late as 1816, citizens in 9 U.S. states weren't even able to vote in elections. Later on, property qualifications and Jim Crow laws imposed by states prevented poor whites and nearly all Southern African Americans from voting. Aside from voting rights, mismanagement of elections can be seen throughout our nation's history, with a lack of uniform election process as a contributing factor. Examples include the corrupt bargain of 1824, the compromise of 1877, and in recent history, the 2000 presidential election, where the Supreme Court halted a crucial recount of the votes in Florida on the basis that there was no uniform statewide standard for recounting the ballots in each county. With a uniform election process, critical flaws and mismanagement, such as the aforementioned examples, are less likely to occur, and free, fair elections can take place.
It is the responsibility not only of state officials to help organize elections, but also that of constituents to ensure that elections are free and fair, with the exception of Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, stating that states must uphold a representative democracy. States are allowed to decide the time, place, and manner of elections. Typical organization within states begins with officials making decisions about how elections are to take place, and then localities come in to execute groundwork set by officials. Localities rely on the policymaking, implementation, and funding of state officials. Citizens are to vote in the format provided by the state if they so choose during election times. If citizens believe that elections are unfair, they can sue the governing body that has wronged them under the Equal Protections Clause of the 14th Amendment. This has been demonstrated by Reynolds v. Sims, where a group of constituents in Alabama saw that district voting lines had been drawn so that there were major population discrepancies during election time.
With our rumination on the maintenance of free and fair elections resolved, the issue of fair representation arises. Pertaining to the matter of congressional districts, we found the delegate theory to be superior. A delegate theory of representation emphasizes the responsibility of representatives to obey the mandates of their constituents. This results in a more representative government and allows the deliberations of many people, instead of just one, to be duly noted. However, some of the disadvantages of this system lie in its inability to specify the views of its constituents or reprimand a representative for insubordination. These objections to the delegate theory were major obstacles in the past, but technology could provide a way to overcome them through increased feedback and more frequent elections. The trustee theory, which emphasizes the autonomy of representatives to act in a way that benefits the nation, has advantages, some of which include a smoother legislative process, as compromise is more easily acquired, and the increased ability of a representative to produce good legislation on matters many of his or her constituents may not be interested or informed in. The disadvantages of this theory are numerous and too largely to be easily dealt with. Among these, the inadequacy of a single person to reliably judge such great affairs, lack of representation and accountability as opposed to the delegate theory, and the proclivity of representatives to act according to their own benefit must be taken into account. We are now ready for your follow-up questions.
Thank you for a very systematic discussion of the question. I like your historical examples of the compromise of, the corrupt bargain of 1824, the compromise of 1877, the election of 2000. What powers does Congress have to react to election fiascos like that? And in those instances and others, how has Congress dealt with electoral problems?
Well, as we stated with the Bush v. Gore case, it was sent to the Supreme Court for it to be decided, and they had to go back and redo the election that had happened in the state.
Did Bush versus Gore produce any legislation, the Congress Act under Article 1, Section 4?
Can you restate your question? I didn't quite hear it.
Right, so Congress has power to make or alter rules that the states make, and there are problems with the election of 2000. In reaction to the election of 2000 and the Bush versus Gore, did Congress then enact any legislation?
I believe there was a Help America Vote Act that was put into place, but there's many people who believe that that didn't actually help very much in the end, but that was put in place in result of the 2000 election and the Florida recount.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Shelby County decision from the Supreme Court and what resulted after that?
Can you repeat that for us, please?
Well, let me rephrase the question. In the Shelby County v. Holder case, the United States Supreme Court ruled that one part of the Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional. Do you know what the effect of that decision was? Okay, if you're not familiar with that, let me just ask you a different question. Can you tell us about what other federal laws have been passed to help provide for free and fair elections?
Yeah, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, 17th. Isn't it's the 21st that allows for Washington, D.C.?
I'm not asking, excuse me, I'm not asking about constitutional amendments. I'm asking about federal statutes or federal laws. And you mentioned already the Help America Vote Act. Are there other laws that Congress has passed that you can tell us about that have helped promote free and fair elections?
I believe they passed a Voting Rights Act in 1965.
Okay.
There was the Indian Rights Act of, no, made them citizens.
Why don't you go on, David?
Okay, thank you. So as you look at American history, do you believe that there are groups that are still victims of voting discrimination? And do you think that the virus might cause some groups to be disenfranchised in the next election?
I know that in our own state, there was some current gerrymandering. I believe it was in 2004 against Native Americans, where we drew district lines to cut them out of our votes. So I know that that is a recent area that has been moved and tried not to get their vote heard, which is not totally fair. And with the coronavirus, I am unsure if that will affect certain groups from voting, but I know it will certainly affect everyone in a certain way on how we vote and if it's uniform in a process or if it has effect on postponing when it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Can you think of any other groups?
Well, I think that some of the groups that could be affected by the coronavirus as far as voting goes could be the elderly or people who are could get the virus because they might not want to go to the polls or go out and vote because the virus could still be around by then.
And with that being said, I think making a uniform election process where it's all mail-in could be very beneficial because then people won't be scared to leave their homes to vote and their vote will still be heard.
So you mentioned Reynolds versus Sims, and I'm wondering if you might follow up on that by discussing any laws, statutes by Congress or other court cases that dealt with the issue of legislative apportionment and districting. So has Congress ever dealt with districting? Are there other court cases that have dealt with districting?
I'm having trouble hearing you with my volume. Can you please repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Right. So are there other cases aside from Reynolds versus Sims that dealt with the issue of time? So
I'm sorry, that's time. And I will say,
email you my question. So
Thank you.
we're back close on time. If you could keep your feedback as succinct as possible, please.
as succinct as possible. Okay, thank you. So I enjoyed your presentation. As a historian, I very much liked your historical examples, and I would have liked to heard more about that, especially the election of 2000, which you're right about the Help America Vote Act. I mean, that's a good example of how Congress did respond to local electoral problems, under its Article 1, Section 4 authority. So, and I thought you had good responses to each part of the question, and overall, I learned and appreciated your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've covered all parts of the question. I think that was good. I liked at the very beginning when you said that the uniform elections are free, fair, and fast, which was a succinct way of describing the advantages of uniformity. I thought that was good. I also like your historical examples. I thought that you would have been familiar with the Shelby County v. Holder case, which was an important decision from the Supreme Court. On the other hand, I was glad that you mentioned the Voting Rights Act and the Help America Vote Act, which shows that you're familiar with some of the federal laws that have been passed to promote voting throughout the country. So overall, I think you did a nice job.
I agree with my colleagues' observations. I enjoyed this presentation. I am sorry that we had some technical difficulties that impeded our conversation at different points, but I was struck by your historical recitation of 1816 and 1824, and those were new points, and so I found that very interesting and important. On my question about disenfranchisement, I was happy to see that you pivoted right away to the discrimination against Native Americans in your own state. And then after a couple of good observations, you moved to the remedy that you touted in terms of vote by mail. So I thought that you did a nice job. I enjoyed this conversation, and good luck to you the rest of the way.
Well, thank you.
Especially the caller, Donald, who called in. So we appreciate your effort to be here. Thank you.